In my laboratory, we intentionally stress people out. It may seem evil, I promise you, it's not. We will intentionally put people under high levels of stress to see what happens to their performance, knowing that the different parts of their brain are going to handle stress quite differently. And if you're wondering, how do we do that? How would we make people stressed out enough to secrete a whole bunch of cortisol in a laboratory setting? Well, let me introduce you to the Trier social stress test. This has been used for decades. And the way it works is you have a panel of judges, usually wearing white lab coats, usually older than the participants who are going to be the guinea pigs in this study. And unbeknownst to the participant, this panel of judges has been specially trained to not emote at all. I mean to show no facial expression, except for maybe modest, minor signs of displeasure or boredom. Now, this is interesting in so many different ways. First of all, this is a tough study to run in the lab because most people are empathic. And if you have empathy for the participant who has to speak without notes for 5 minutes, their tasks, and when they come to the lab, we greet them and we give them some questionnaires to fill out, and then we have them prepare a speech. So write everything you can. We give them 10 minutes to do that. So they feverishly take their notes. And then when that 10 minutes is up, there's another experimenter, not one in the white lab coat, but sort of like a friendly one who comes and gets them and tells them it's time to go give the speech. And they take them into what we call in our lab the stress chamber. So they walk into this room and there's the panel of judges looking at you without any emotional expression. Human beings interpret facial neutrality as negative. So if you're a woman, for instance, and you've ever been told to smile, as much as this might drive you crazy, and it should, but there's a reason for it. People who are just neutral are interpreted as negative. Regardless of the sex or gender of the participant, it doesn't matter. If you're not making any kind of facial expression, a person who doesn't know you is going to be very cautious and assume the worst. Now think about that from an evolutionary perspective. It was much safer to deal with a member from an opposing tribe or just a different tribe who you didn't know with suspicion. You wanted to be careful. Was this a friend or a foe? One way to show that you're safe is to smile, is to make sure your face is showing positive affect rather than negative, or as we've learned, even neutral. So that's one fascinating thing. And it has a lot to do with why some people are more likable. Some people tend to just have it easier in most situations. A lot of that has to do with positive affect, especially positive affect that is expressed. I'll tell you, I give talks all around the world to hundreds of people. And the rare occasions where I get in front of an audience where everybody is just kind of sitting there, not making any facial expressions, I know my performance is worse because I can't find any positivity cues which benefit my performance. They actually give me energy. I know I'm resonating with somebody in this social contagion kind of way. Emotion is contagious for better and for worse. So when I'm speaking, whether it's giving keynotes in corporate environments or lecturing in a college classroom, I'm always scanning for the friendly face that's smiling at me, that's nodding. And if I can find that person, boom, my performance really improves. Whereas if everybody is just neutral, it's harder for me because there's nothing to anchor onto, and you tend to kind of assume they don't like what you're doing. It's not a fair assumption to make. But because of the way we're biologically engineered, we're going to assume that. So what happens is this person, the participant who has to give the speech, comes into the stress chamber. They don't have their notes, remember, so they rattle off everything they can remember about the speech. Probably takes 30 seconds, but they have 5 full minutes to stand there and try to do that. But this panel of judges isn't going to help you. They won't rescue you. They will say, you still have time left, please continue. Wait 30 seconds. You still have time left, please continue. And as if that's not bad enough, after these 5 minutes of public speaking in front of other people are finally up, you say, stop. Now, take the number 1022 and subtract out loud as fast as you can by 13s. So the person starts trying to do that. Every time they make a mistake, you say, that's incorrect, please start again. So honestly, it's 10 minutes of hell. The other thing that's so interesting about this task is that it is a psychosocial stressor. That means there's a psychological component of it where you know as the participant that you're not doing well, or even if you are, you can't read the social cues, and so it's really uncomfortable. And then there's this social aspect, which is there's a group of people who isn't giving you any emotional feedback, which makes it almost impossible to perform a task well, or at least it's very hard to do. And because of humans being such a social species, we evolved in social groups, this is tremendously stressful to human beings. And as you can see here, you will just mount a massive cortisol response to this. And I will say that it works in about 80% of people where they find this so stressful that you can see the cortisol levels going up just by taking saliva samples throughout this task. And you can also see that in the dashed line, that's the control group. They're probably so relieved they don't have to give this speech or do the math task that their stress levels go down, their cortisol levels go down. But in the stress group, in the group of people who have to give that speech, they have this spike that takes a long time to come down after that. I hope this doesn't seem terribly unethical. It's been used for decades safely, and I promise we debrief all the participants. We tell them they did great, even if they really didn't. But what happens then is we ask the question, well, how does your brain perform once you have a brain loaded with cortisol? What happens to these different memory systems that are going to handle stress in different ways? And so I'll give you an example, which is of a memory task, and it starts by participants who, again, go through the same Trier social stress test, trying to learn information. And in this case, they're just watching a slideshow with narration corresponding to it. It's about this mom and his little boy. They're leaving home in the morning to go visit the father at work. And it all starts out very neutrally. There's even a little bit of positive in it, but it's pretty neutral until midway through this slideshow, you see this little boy get hit by a car and both of his legs are severed. So I'm not going to put the images up here. They're very gory, very bloody. But now we have a part of this event that's unfolding in real time. It started neutral, it ends neutral, but in the middle, there's this really negative information, which we know the amygdala, especially under stress, is going to respond to. So the question is, what happens to people's memory under stress as opposed to when they're in a non-stressed control group? And as you can see right here, their neutral memory suffers. Under stress, your hippocampus just cannot function very well. So your ability to track and remember the neutral features of an experience or an event or any kind of information fails. But your ability to remember the emotionally negative is amplified. And again, I want to say we already have a negativity bias built into our brains. It's part of our evolution. It's supposed to protect us, and it does up to a point. But under stress, this negativity bias, this tendency to focus only on what's threatening or upsetting is amplified. So you end up with a brain that can't really track the neutral, but overemphasizes the negative. I would argue extremely adaptive in the short run. You need to have this negative memory in order to learn from the negative things that happen to you. You have to be able to remember them so you can change your behavior, so you don't keep making the same mistakes on a species level so that we could survive. Can you imagine if our ancestors couldn't preferentially encode where they shouldn't go? That there was a poisonous snake or a really dangerous watering hole where there were lions every night. If they couldn't learn what to avoid, we humans never would have survived as a species. I want you to understand that this is all beneficial. It's part of our evolution as human beings. However, we're not dealing with the same acute stressors that our ancestors did. We're dealing with chronic stressors that go on and on and on and on, where we're always kind of low-grade stress and it never turns off, or we're stressed and then we're not, but then we're stressed again, but then we're not. We have a bad day at work, then we come down, then we get in a fight with our spouse, we come down, and our stress systems didn't evolve to handle this. So if you are living in a highly stressed, chronically stressed out state, eventually what you are at risk of happening to you is that your brain will start to wire this way. So that what was once adaptive is now terribly maladaptive because you're only and excessively tracking just what's negative.